most people are intimidated by the $10 million deal, and they don't realize that the $10 million deal is easier to do because the $1 million deal is probably somebody who's a novice. This might be the deal. And the person with the $10 million deal, they've done this before. You're not coaching emotions, mania, etc. And the point I'm trying to make is like, go big. Like, if I can do it, you can do it, they can do it. I think a lot of people don't understand that they could go bigger. And in this industry, the sky is the limit.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Yona Weiss, on a beautiful day here and excited to have another incredible guest. Guys, wait for it. That's right. We have the one and only Aviva Sonenreich. I am excited to have you on the show. We've connected over social medias for quite a while now, but great to have you in the person, in the flesh. Well, virtually at least.
Thank you for having me. I've been a fan of your show for a while now, and I feel really grateful to be on.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we originally were introduced, and I actually remember this. I have a very good memory for people and things like that. It's a kind of uncanny memory type thing, but I use it to my advantage. So we were introduced through Hakeem Valles, who you had worked with TikTok years ago. And he was telling me when he was on this show, and this was close to 3 years ago, he was like, this lady, Aviva, she's killing it on TikTok. And I'm like, I'm not going on TikTok. He's like, you got to go on TikTok. And you were like the case study for him and showing me how I need to go on TikTok. But why don't you tell us a little bit before we get into that, because that's, I'm sure, a whole chapter in of itself. I'd love to get a little background, who you are, what you do. I know you are in Denver, Colorado, and in the warehouse, the real estate market, but that's my version. Love to hear yours.
Sure. Thank you again. So my name's Aviva. I am a commercial real estate owner, broker, manager, etc. out of Denver, Colorado. My family survived Nazi Germany, came to America in 1950, and really played out a true American dream story, which they found through hard work, diligent savings, and eventually buying real estate. And in 1984, my grandfather bought the first warehouse in Denver, which we own, lease, and manage to this day.
Awesome.
I know that commercial real estate is a very gate-kept industry, and it's been very hard for a lot of people to get into. But I have found a new obsession with talking about it on the internet, because what I have found is that there's such a demand for information about the industry online, and the gatekeepers have tried really hard to keep it offline, and that's just not the reality of the world we live in. And so I definitely broker by day and then hop online and talk about it by night and in the day too. So
you really grew up around real estate. I mean, did you know from even a young age that that's what you wanted to do or were going to do? Or did you have any other, type of passions or, stints along the way?
I think I started when I was like 21 or 22. So I kind of knew. I was a DJ for like 8 or 9 years, which was a fun run. And I learned a lot about marketing, honestly. I attribute everything I know about marketing to my past career in music. But this real estate is in my blood through and through, and I'm a lifer, and I'm very fortunate that I like it.
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure, because you have plenty of people who maybe grew up in it, have, a second or third or fourth generation, and just, don't have the skill set or the desire to continue that path. And, rightfully so. But, it seems like you are in a fortunate place where you're able to take that tradition and take what you've learned and apply it to kind of modernize, like you said, using the marketing skills that you knew and kind of applying it to today's real estate world, which, although commercial real estate is like one of the most archaic industries, there are ways to spice it up.
It's slow. but steady, and it's not going anywhere, thankfully.
Right.
So, yeah. And, I think something about being in warehousing in Denver is we were I was sitting in the passenger seat of a massive shift in just the way that people consumed warehouses, which then kind of was this catalyst. Let me explain. In 2010, when cannabis was legalized in the state of Colorado recreationally, that really changed our warehouse dynamics overnight. And that spurred what went on to then be e-commerce. Really, it's like these emerging industries came into warehousing between cannabis, which was it was really big for the Denver market, but then ultimately e-commerce, which nationally has just completely shifted how we consume real estate. And ultimately, internationally, it will affect the world as well. But America is spearheading just shipping everything and logistics. So I could talk about that all day, obviously.
Well, we certainly can. Well, not all day, but at least for the next 25 minutes or so, we can talk more about that. Before we get more into the warehouse stuff, kind of trickle back. We mentioned kind of in passing that you're like a TikTok superstar. How did that happen? And what does that mean? I mean, is this still something you're actively pursuing, or was that kind of in the middle of COVID where it kind of blew up? And talk to me about how that's affected your business.
Sure. So during the pandemic, March of 2020, when I tell you, like, my phone did not ring for 3 months for work, my phone did not ring for 3 months. And just being an overall, busybody, I have a cute cat. I started a TikTok for my cute cat who has one eye. And a couple months into the pandemic, a good friend of mine turned to me and said, Aviva, what are you doing with the cat? You have so much competition. Why don't you talk about your work? Nobody else is talking about that. And that really started it all. I owe it to Sam for that. And I had heard rumblings that TikTok was going to be what it became. Mm-hmm. And so just went, I essentially just took to YouTube University and studied everything I could about the platform, the algorithm, short form content, and went all in. And then the results have been, it's been really interesting. I think the biggest result in real estate, you kind of want to become like the mayor of your town. That's always been the strategy as a real estate agent, so that people
know you. Exactly. It creates the brand, it creates the recognition. And I think that it sounds like that's probably the biggest factor that's come out of this.
Definitely. Look, commercial real estate is a long, as you all know, and so is social media. And so being that these apps are geo-local, which means they push out the content locally first, it just worked really well to becoming like the warehouse girl on the internet and in Denver, and then getting referring business that way.
Amazing. And so you've actually seen business like directly from that.
Yes, I would say the most significant business is definitely within my community, right? Like I have my community and then their community, just constantly posting content has really honed in my community, their community towards our company. But I have been on the phone with owners throughout the state through TikTok, which is wild. And I think there's a lot more people on there who own property than I originally thought. So,
I mean, that's a fascinating point, because you're right. I wouldn't have thought that, real estate owners, commercial real estate owners are watching TikTok. But the fact that you've had people call you from having seen your videos, and maybe it could be that it's also, it trickles or posts on to Instagram as well, which maybe is more likely that people are going to watch that, not to downplay the TikTok, but, it's at least they'll admit that. But what I'm seeing is that there is a brand recognition. There are people that are out there that are watching that you wouldn't assume necessarily are watching. And I think that's something really important for anyone who is doing or trying to be more active on social media in general, is that the consistency of just posting, just putting the content out there. You'll never be known by anyone if you don't put the stuff out there, right?
Hey, it's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's a grind. It's never ending. But like I said, that's commercial real estate too. And I don't know what else I would do all day. I like doing it. So it makes it fun and I enjoy the challenge. And honestly, I have struggled, to be honest with you, with my broker community in my town. Why? It's not a lot of forward thinking folks. It's a lot of by the book brokers who look down on me for my usage with social media. I'm always getting all the questions, and getting on the internet, I have been able to meet so many amazing brokers nationally and or people in the industry internationally who are like-minded. Like I thought I was in this where nobody felt the way I felt. And then I hopped online and I've now met in person, like so many of these unbelievable folks who work in the industry who are forward thinking and stand side by side with me to push the industry forward into reality.
Yeah. I think that's another huge point, is that you end up just, creating that community and meeting the people who are like-minded, because unfortunately, for better or for worse, like we said earlier, that the commercial real estate industry does have people who are kind of just like old school, very old school. And especially if you're working for big brokerage shops, they like to play by specific rules, and you kind of have to fit in that. And if you try to do something that is different, you'll basically be ostracized or told, you can't do that, right? I've had so many people who are working for some of the big brokerage houses and like, well, I can't post on social media, like, except for, the closings, like that's all I can post. Whereas that's not what's going to resonate with people. You're posting your closing, right? No one cares about that. It's crazy.
What's amazed me is how the brokerages, right, the big shops actually teach very poor form when it comes to social media and marketing, which is crazy and has been nothing but a benefit. But it's all been stifling it. And it's been, I truly, you see these firms, how much money goes through these firms and how much money they could allocate towards marketing properly or figuring it out. And they just teach the young guys and girls exactly what you should not do. And it is mind-blowing.
Cold calling, and that's it, basically. But again, on the marketing side, you're absolutely right. You need to be, forward thinking. And like you said, your experience as a DJ in the music industry, that marketing, that's what drives your business. And you're not going to, you're doing it on your own, especially if you are an entrepreneur, if you are doing it on your own. And so you got to figure out what works. I think that's what entrepreneurs differ in a lot of ways from big companies, is who have, big marketing budgets, but don't understand marketing the way that the consumer understands it, is that entrepreneurs only do what works, what actually puts bread on the table, right? That's what we're going to do. And so I love following people in the, digital marketing space who are doing things differently, and because I know that they're going to be doing it in order to make money. Like they're not just doing the marketing stuff just because they have this budget and they have to spend and they have to put stuff out there. No, they're doing it and it's working for them, because if not, they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. I obsess over is like, I'll go to the airport, go to the grocery store, and I like to look at what people are doing on their phones. I like to obsess over, including my own consumption behaviors, because if I'm doing this and the guy at the airport next to me is doing it and the lady on the other side of it tells a bigger picture about how we as a society are consuming content. And with how fast-paced the world moves right now, you better make sure that you're showing up where everybody else is, because we don't get to pick the medium that is popular, right? We get to pick if we play into what everybody else is consuming. So it's a challenge, and you got to stay nimble. But it's like you said, that's the entrepreneurial spirit, where we have to put food on the table at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the warehouse hotline. Okay. So, I mean, that's just like a classic use of a name for a company. But I mean, this is something that you're doing full time, right? You're a real estate, but focusing specifically on the warehouse and I guess what you call it, e-commerce or logistic centers. Is there like a proper term? You just call it warehouse?
Industrial. Try to keep it. That's the whole point.
People think about this. And when you brought up the cannabis industry and the legalization in Colorado, which was, I don't remember if it was the first or one of the first states that did that, Is that still, I mean, we're going over a decade later. Is it still as popular as it was then?
Sure. So it was the first state to recreationally legalize, and it turned Denver into like the bachelor party haven. I was a waitress, and it was like, at the time I was a waitress, and it was like bachelor party, bachelor party, bachelor party. Everybody just wanted to come to Denver to consume. The way any type of legalization plays out is that, other states start to legalize and it becomes less of a novelty. And what was the green rush is now suffering really tough. And it's really just, I mean, my thoughts have always been, how could anybody have thought anything else would happen, right? If the goal is give it to everybody, the supply and demand will be off kilter, and it will not be like when we were the only people supplying it. So that industry has been brutalized in Colorado in the past year to 2 years. But it's just like the natural progression of the cream rising to the top, the businesses that were not stable falling, and they have ruined a number of warehouses in the meantime, but they'll figure it out.
So what types of businesses are you seeing using industrial space, kind of more than others at this point?
My favorite tenants are the trades. Anybody in construction, roofer, your plumber, your electrician, your flooring. All those folks need warehouses, and they are handy tenants that I love. Other uses, anything e-commerce. We have a tenant who sells rock climbing chalk and just crushes it. I have a tenant who I just leased last year 7,500 square feet, which is pretty big for a one-person operation, who sells individual Legos online. And the warehouse is just lined with thousands and thousands of mini drawers and then Legos, and she kills it. It's the craziest thing. So we see everything, and then there's automotive, some of the arts. There's a lot of different uses, but trades and e-commerce are the big ones.
Incredible. So where'd you get the name for the hotline? I mean, people call you, they know they need a warehouse. This is the 911 of warehouses, Aviva.
So in commercial real estate, there's no branding, right? Let's refer back to talk how archaic the industry is. And I'm looking at the biggest firms in our city, state, country, and they're all just last names and color schemes. And to me, it is what it is. And I was like, I want to differentiate us so that, because at first I was going by just our last name as a firm, Sonenreich and Company.
But I mean, that was your family business, right? Saying you came into that. I mean, you didn't come up with that.
Correct. But I realized like the disconnect in that, like you call and everyone's like, what do you do? Right. And so another thing happened. It was during the pandemic, and I was talking on the phone with my mom, and she's like, I need 409. And I'm in the cleaning section and there's no 409. And I was like, there's this one, there's the knockoff. And she said, no, I need 409. And I'm looking, and there's 5 other products that are 409, but that was the deal killer. And so, seeing how our industry relates to branding, realizing there was a lot of opportunity, and that I really only want field phone calls about warehouses, I rebranded our company to the Warehouse Hotline so that when people looked at the name of the company, they knew for the most part what we do. So it was just going headfirst into truly branding in an industry where that really is sparse.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense. And it's just, by the way, genius in terms of the branding, because you're absolutely right. People who call you or we're going to find you, they're going to remember you. You're going to be memorable. And I think that's what is the most important thing when it comes to branding, is being memorable, standing out. So kudos to you on that idea. And so is your brokerage more percentage-wise dealing with sales or leases of properties? And is there a breakdown of that?
Sure. So my father syndicated like a 15 property portfolio of warehouses between like 1999 to 2016. So an element of what I do is leasing those, which was about like, I don't know, 70 units, maybe 60 or 70 units. I grew the portfolio with third party and acquisitions. So now we have about 110 tenants. So there's a lot of leasing that obviously.
Right. Sure.
We definitely do sales, thankfully. And I would say it's probably like 60 leasing, 40 sales. But my old man comes in and he does the big deals. He doesn't want to do anything else. And so I'm very fortunate to just watch those, because watching some of these large transactions will make your head spin. Real estate is crazy.
But that's awesome that you get that firsthand experience, and watching someone who's been doing it for so long, having that at your disposal, I think is something that 99.9% of people don't have access to anything like that. So you're very fortunate.
Absolutely. And here's something I want everybody to realize is that, like, when you're doing a deal, if you do a deal for $1 million or $10 million, right? Most people are intimidated by the $10 million deal, and they don't realize that the $10 million deal is easier to do, because the $1 million deal is probably somebody who's a novice. This might be the deal. And the person with the $10 million deal, they've done this before. You're not coaching emotions, mania, etc. And the point I'm trying to make is, like, go big. Like, if I can do it, you can do it, they can do it. And I think a lot of people don't understand that they could go bigger. And in this industry, it's the sky is the limit.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the sky is the limit. And the intimidation that comes, I think, with beginning people, and when you're dealing with smaller deals, it seems more comfortable than dealing with bigger deals. But I think you're absolutely right in terms of just the sophistication of larger operators makes it so much easier. But I guess on the brokerage side, but on the transaction side, it can still be extremely intimidating, especially if you're raising money and doing stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely minimizing, but I just think there's so much opportunity out there, specifically with what the internet is providing the greater community, that I just want to push people to know, because I was pushed by my family, you can do this, you can do bigger, go harder, do better, and I realized I don't have that privilege of just being pushed or told that they're capable. And so I like to tell people that what I was taught, because I realize the privilege in what I have been taught, and I want to share it.
Good for you. Awesome. Love that. And keep it up, because it needs to be said. And there are people out there that need to hear it all the time. So just share that message. Aviva, I'd love to transition to what we call the final four. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First question to you is, what's the worst job you ever had?
Sure. The worst job I ever had was my freshman year of college. I worked in the food hall of my dorm. I made $7.25 an hour. That was probably my worst job, now that I think about it.
That sounds like it could be not something you want to.
It was, but yeah, a number of restaurant jobs are up there with the worst jobs.
Well, I mean, that sounds like you're doing that during college, but I mean, when you were doing your DJing, were you working other jobs also? Because DJing is usually just like a night job.
Yeah, the restaurants and internships and stuff like that. I'm a busybody. So.
Gotcha. But quickly, you moved into the real estate game, right?
Yes, very, very. It's like I said, in my blood, nothing else for me.
Good for you. Second question, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Sure. I think the biggest one would be How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a big one. Just
Dale Carnegie. Yeah.
Understanding how to interact with people in a efficient way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, classic book. I think Dale Carnegie wrote that one. Napoleon Hill is the other one, Think and Grow Rich, which is very, very similar in a lot of ways. And I think they were, if I'm not mistaken, they were like, there was a lot of interlap between those 2 books in terms of, like, they knew each other and they lived at the same time. I don't remember. Really? I think they were in a mastermind together or something like that. There was some sort of group of people that they came together and, I don't know, tried to control the world. I don't know, something like that. Third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I still want to learn just more about sales. I know it's like, that's silly because my job is sales, but sales psychology is so fascinating. And I feel like there's not enough time in the day for me to learn more and more about it. So
it's an extremely important skill to have no matter what you're doing, because really in any job, and I've said this many times before, everything has to do with sales. Everything. I mean, whether it's interactions you have, and go back to that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like that's really, it's a sales book in a lot of ways, because it's just understanding psychology of people and understanding how to interact with people in the right way. Hopefully for the right reasons, but nevertheless, it's still good. Are you doing any type of skill building in that right now? Have you done like sales training or any types of stuff like that in the past? I mean, there's so much out there.
No, I read some books and I'm a course junkie. I'm actually just like wrapping up a extensive podcast course. So I can only do one course at a time because I go hard, but it's in the near future. I love online, like learning from, like I went to university here in town, and you can only get professors who, a lot of the professors were local professors who were not successful, to be entirely honest with you. And I have found if I can learn on the internet, I can tap into so many more people.
Sure.
And ideally find someone who truly is qualified to teach what I'm trying to learn.
Absolutely. And there is so much out there on the internet, especially with sales. One of my favorite people who we had on the show back a while back is Dale Dupree, who has a company that he started called the Sales Rebellion. And it's just out of the box type sales stuff that he's done and been extremely successful in his career, and then started this community. And I just loved it. Love his whole premise and everything like that. So check it out. You might be enthralled by that. It's very different than like your traditional sales approaches and things like that, but it works. So
it's a creative, it is not black and white by any means.
Yeah, so much to do. Fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, to me, success is just being happy and feeling fulfilled emotionally and being able to give. I find the more you give, the more you get. And so I find this microcosm of giving, working really hard, and being happy to be my success to just having, or just that's my formula to a good life. Love
it. It's so true. The more you give, the more you get, 100%. Especially when you're doing it for the reasons, to give and not to get. A lot of people give kind of with selfish motives, but if the true, altruism is there, you're going to get so much back, so much more. And we've talked about this book also, if you haven't come across it, also a sales book, really, but it's with this concept. It's called The Go-Giver. Okay. I don't know if you come across that, but it's just incredible.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So many resources available at Weiss Advice.
I really appreciate you having me on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Aviva, thank you so much for joining me. Finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Sure. You can DM me at Aviva Real Estate. That's AVIVA Real Estate. Or email me at aviva@warehousehotline.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And you're on all the socials basically, right? Is there any one that you're more active on currently than others?
It's easiest to get a hold of me on Instagram or Twitter.
There you go. Awesome. Well, excited for this to go live, which will be in the next few weeks. So thank you so much for joining me. It's really been a pleasure getting to know a little more about you.
The feeling is mutual. Thank you so much. And let me know what I can do to help promote and provide you value.
I appreciate it. And to our listeners, thank you guys for joining us and listening all the way to the end. Once again, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.